I'll just introduce myself first. My name is Pav Jordan. I'm the VP of Communications for Northern Graphite, and my role here is to just help moderate what's going to be a sort of fireside chat style conversation. Just a few facts about Northern Graphite. So we are North America's only natural graphite producer. We're a TSX Venture listed company. We're also a company that's seeking to become a vertically integrated producer of battery anode material, and that's what brings us here today to look at how to build BAM processing capacity in North America and really outside of China. So with us today, you can see that we have Hugues Jacquemin, our Chief Executive Officer, Michael Grimm, who's president of our battery materials group and also our Chief Commercial Officer, and Moritz Hantel is our VP of Communications. The structure of today's conversation will be, we'll get some opening remarks from my colleagues, and then we will go to a sort of a Q&A style session, and then we'll leave time at the end for questions from the audience. I encourage you, if you wish, to turn your cameras on to make this feel as much like a real room with real people in it. Well, real people, but in the same place. And we'll go from here. So, Hugues, why don't I pass it over to you to begin with?
Yeah, thanks, Pav. Yeah, as you said, our strategy is clearly to become the world's largest battery anode producer outside of China. And you might want to ask, why is that? Well, today, if you think about the battery and the anode, 90% of the material that goes into the battery basically comes from China, and 70% of the graphite, the natural graphite that goes into the battery, is also mined outside of China. And so there is a real need to establish a supply chain which is outside of China, and we're clearly doing that today. And if you might ask, well, what's involved in the producing of battery anode material using natural graphite? Well, first of all, you've got to mine the material, then you've got to give it a shape and a certain size, and then you have to purify it, and then you have to coat it. And so in order to do all of that, we basically have three mining assets. One is the Lac des Îles mine, which is producing today and has been for the last 35 years. And we have another mine in Namibia, which was producing between 16 and 18, and we're just busy restarting it. And then we have a project in Ontario that we're developing. And if you add all these mines together, we could produce as much as 300,000 tons of anode material on an annual basis. And then we are developing two processing plants, one in Quebec, in northern Quebec, in Baie-Comeau, and the other one in France. We just announced it last week. And the strategy is to be able to supply both North America and Europe using the French facility for Europe and the Baie-Comeau facility for North America. And the way we want to be doing that is, having the full integrated supply chain and basically provided the battery manufacturers with a drop-in solution for that. And the materials themselves are developed in Germany by Moritz's team and Michael's team, and where we have a full electrochemical lab that can basically take the graphite, do the characterization of a material, and transform the graphite flakes into anode material, and then build batteries, test those batteries, and cycle them. And if you look at, why have we chosen Baie-Comeau and our French site? I mean, it's really to have basically access to cheap, green, and available electricity. In Quebec, it's hydroelectricity. In France, it's mostly nuclear, and that's an important part of our cost. That's why we want to make sure we have affordable sources. The second piece is we need to be located near a deep water port, because we're moving material across continents, and so a lot of our material moves on a ship. And then thirdly, we want to be close to the market and make sure that we can be, let's say, a regional supply source rather than, you know, being all the way across the world. If you think about the approach, it's a modular approach. So we're scaling our business in terms of at the same speed at which the market is growing. And so our view is that we have these 3 mines, we have these 2 BAM plants, but they go up in modules. So that's very important for us. And if you look at the timeline, well, we started this in 2022 when we bought the mines from Imerys, and then we acquired the division of Ereus, which basically Michael was running and Moritz was part of, and we did that in the beginning of 2024, and we will be developing the BAM plants in France and in Quebec to be targeting to be in production in 2027. And then from there, we will scale the capacities in the mine in order to be able to grow to up to 300,000 tons of flakes and 200,000 tons of battery anode material. That's the strategy. And clearly, you know, our expertise is we have very experienced miners, and there are not many because, as you said at the beginning, Pav, the mine in Lac Désir is the only producing mine in North America. But we also have all the expertise of the team in Germany around product and process development to make battery anode material. And so we have a very strong team of about 100 people that are working day in, day out to build this strategy and develop the company.
Great, thank you, Hugues. Michael, why don't you take us through some of the commercial perspectives in Northern's vision for the battery group as well?
Sure, thanks, Pav. So from a commercial perspective, the creation of Northern Graphite's battery materials group about a year ago was a strategic step to move beyond just being a mining company and toward becoming a fully integrated supplier to the battery industry. So maybe coming back to the historical business side, so on the industrial side, so Northern Graphite already holds a 20% market share in natural graphite in the United States, making us a key player in a sector that's steadily growing as well beyond the battery side. So we're talking there, we're selling to refractory customers and others. But for sure, our commercial goal is to unlock the full value of our natural graphite assets by transforming them into high-performance battery anode materials, what we call also BAM, so battery anode material, and deliver them directly to our customers in North America and Europe, and speaking bluntly, to all the Western countries. So the battery materials group is built around a blend of industrial expertise and technical know-how. We've brought in a team with backgrounds in graphite science, electrochemistry, but also process scale-up and market development. So this allows us to speak both the language of the lab and the language of the market. So we see a significant upside because customers are increasingly demanding secure and local supply chains, and this is for a couple of reasons. So first, to de-risk for geopolitical reasons. Second, to qualify for incentives like the US IRA. And third, to reduce the overall CO2 footprint. The last one, this is actually where I'm the most favorite, maybe sometimes not the OEMs, but this is one of the reasons why I'm working in the industry, because I want to support the CO2 reduction. So having BAM production close to the customers in North America or Europe drastically reduces also the lead times, improves logistics and also the responsiveness, and helps battery makers meet local content requirements. So I think, in my opinion, it's not just a nice to have, but it's quickly becoming also a commercial necessity. So the opportunity set is massive. So global graphite demand for batteries is expected to be more than triple by 2030. And most of that growth will be outside of China. So we are positioning ourselves to scale with that demand, starting with pilot scale production and rapidly building toward full scale plants. So from our Baie-Comeau site in Quebec, so in northern Quebec in Canada, to our European site in France. So the European project, roughly totaling up 160 million or 159 million euro, has been recognized by the European Union as a strategic project. So 1 out of 47, according to the Critical Minerals Act, supporting us mainly on the financing. And this is for Northern Graphite a major milestone, validating our role in Europe's battery future. So in short, the Battery Materials Group is Northern's response to where the market is headed. Maybe I saw in the chat the question, is the market heading more to natural or synthetic? I can answer, like, I would say maybe the market today is more 70-30 to synthetic, but based on the recent tariffs, which exclude the natural graphite but include the synthetic, it will be very interesting to see how that's going to continue. But back to you, Pef.
Yeah, thank you very much, Michael. And we're going to get into a lot of those details in a bit. But Moritz, why don't you take it from here and just discuss this from the aspect of innovation? What is all this about?
Sure, Prof. And I think innovation is also an important part. As Hugues and Michael mentioned before, we have a great team to cover really the whole vertical integration, starting from the geology of the right deposit, of the mining engineering, but also going all the way down to process engineering, and developing the product. So we have a team of experts, including several PhDs on material science, process engineering, and electrochemistry. And the important part here is really, we need to speak the language of our customers. So we have the resource, we have the graphite, so we have the raw material to process it. But the key here is, and that's the part of innovation, is how do we process it? So in the end, even though we are talking about battery active material as something generic, as like there is a one solution fits all, in reality, every battery manufacturer has customized materials for their different battery lines and battery products. And the key here is really to understand and being in close interaction with the customers to learn what are their needs in terms of specifications, and then transferring these specifications into product development, taking the understanding of our graphite, going through the whole process chain of vertical integration. So going into first the concentrate, going from the concentrate to milling, shaping, purification, and coating, to in the end have a final product which suits the needs and the specifications of our customers. And this is a very important key. And we are at the moment, we started the journey by speeding up the process using what we call a virtual pilot plant approach. So instead of going step by step with small lab equipment, we reached out to state-of-the-art technology providers. At the moment, the technology owners for battery active material are the Chinese. So we reached out to also Asian suppliers to really directly process our material from the mine already into battery active material, to learn, to speed up the process. And with this, we were able to already sample first demonstrators to key customers, both in North America and Europe, to learn together with the customer and also fine-tune the material to their needs, to, in this regard, really speed up the process. And I think this is the important part here. And in this case, with the battery active material, we need to learn from the Chinese. So they are the technology owners, the process owners. They have developed it, scaled it to the level we see today. And now it's upon us in the Western world to catch up, to copy, maybe you can say, in the first place, but then also to really bring in our Western innovation part to, from there, bring it to the next level.
Great. Thank you, Moritz. And we're going to get into all these details as well. But so what happens now, folks, is we have a couple of questions that we've designed to help talk about this topic broadly. And we'll go through those for the next 15 minutes or so, and then we'll open it to questions. At that point, I'll just ask you to raise your hand, and you'll be able to go ahead and speak directly to our panelists. But the first question, I think, it's the topic du jour, which is it's geopolitics. And I'd love to hear from all our panelists on the impact that geopolitics have on getting processing capacity built in the West in general, in North America specifically, as applies to our projects, and maybe even talk a little bit about government policy and how it's going to be impacted and how it will impact us. So, Hugues, would you like to take that?
Sure. Well, I think, we should not base businesses on geopolitics. And of course, we have to take it into account, but that should not drive our strategy. That's what I mean by that. And so, as a company, what we're trying to do is we're trying to create the infrastructure that would enable us to compete on an equal footing into the marketplace and provide our customers with the best possible solution at the best possible price, and to lead in that. And so, from our perspective, what's happening around the world, yes, of course, it's impacting us, but it should not, deviate us from our goal, which is to become the largest producer of anode material outside of China. And there's no doubt that, in order for us to reduce the CO2 footprint, we have to localize. If we want to reduce our cost, and we have to be very efficient, we need to look at all the different steps of our process and make sure that we do the thing at the right place. For example, we were always thinking about doing milling, shaping, purification, coating in one place. Well, we've actually changed our strategy now, and we're looking to do the milling and the shaping closer to the mine because there is a yield of about 50 to 60%. And therefore, we are able to ship half of the material than we were before, reducing the cost and reducing the CO2 footprint. There's no doubt that, when you look at China, and I see a lot of questions here on the board, what price are being sold and why are the Chinese much lower price than the other producers? Well, a couple of things. I mean, first of all, the Chinese government does invest and support their industry to have a very strong position. And in some cases, that creates a very uncompetitive situation in Europe and in the US and in Canada, or the Western world, as Michael was describing it. And then the other thing is that they are at it for a much longer time than us. They have the technology, and they're able to basically scale very, very quickly. And that scale gives them, on top of all the benefits of being operating in China with the support of the government, on top of that, it also gives them an advantage on the cost. So we have to be smarter, we have to be faster, and whatever happens, we're talking about between 4 to 6 terawatt of capacity in the world. If half of that is graphite, we're talking about between 2 to 3 million tons of anode material that will be consumed on an annual basis, and that material, if it's coming from natural graphite, will require 6 million tons of flakes because the yield is about 50%. So there's a lot of room, and we're talking about producing 200,000 ton of anode material by 2035. So there is a lot of room in the market for players to invest, and I see on the call here we have a few other graphite companies that are coming to listen to us today. But with the midst of what we're in, we need to keep our eye on the long term, and we need to deal with what's happening to us in the short term and not let the geopolitics get in the way.
Great, thank you, Hugues. And Michael, did you have anything to add there from the commercial perspective?
Yeah, I think the main point will be, as Hugues said, our focus is on the Western countries, and yeah, we're going there.
Okay, great. Let's talk a little bit now about the actual development of our processing capacity, whether it's in Canada at Baie-Comeau or in France. What are the clear advantages and what are the challenges? And why don't we throw to Moritz first here to talk about that from the innovative perspective.
Sure, and I think Hugues mentioned already one of our approaches here is instead of scaling everything at the same place, like having one production site going milling, shaping, purification, and coating, we decided to split it a little bit and bring the milling, shaping, especially closer to the mine sites, to reduce here the amount of material we need to ship to the next step. While at the same time, we decided having really the purification and coating capabilities close to the customers, close with access to the big OEMs producing the batteries. And that's also like the link of the strategy, like with Baie-Comeau in Canada, saying, okay, we are here in the mouth of the St. Lawrence River, we have a deep water port, so like we can reach the markets with the final product. But at the same time, we don't need to bring all the flakes to Baie-Comeau. We bring already our spherical graphite, which for sure reduces here the logistics. And we also decided and we selected the locations on the availability of green CO2-free energy. So especially in Canada, we have a lot of hydropower, reducing here the CO2 footprint from the energy perspective. The same is for the European project where we are going with our Namibian mine, where for sure we can rely on solar power to power both the mining operations, but also the milling, shaping. So this will help us to reduce our CO2 emissions from this perspective. But also we need to be smart from an innovation perspective to say, okay, how can we be more efficient? How can we increase the yield? And the best energy is the energy we don't spend, because that definitely is CO2 neutral.
Great, thank you. And Hugues, how about you? Could you speak a little bit more about that and maybe discuss some of the synergies? Because we, as you said, we just announced last week that we were also going to be building a BAM plant in France, but we do serve, our objective is to serve basically the Western world, right? Could you just talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, no, I think you know, maybe a couple of things building on what Moritz said. The demand for the battery anode material will come in steps and gradually. And you know, the way we've designed our business strategy is to grow with the market. And so to do that, you know, we want to be modular, and we want to increase capacity with the market growth, because at the end, you know, we need to attract investment in the company. And I think it's a mistake to think that you can go from 0 to 100% of your capacity out there and then stay at that 100% level forever. And so when we think about how we are developing our 3 mines and the 2 sites, the one in Quebec and the one in France, we think about, you know, doing that at the same speed of the market, and then the modules within those plants, whether it's the mine. So for example, you know, Namibia, we start at 31,000 tons, when we go to 80,000 tons, and we go to 130,000 tons, and we go to 150,000 tons. In Canada, we go from 20 to 50, then we build the 40 kiloton in Bissett Creek, and then we scale that up to the 100,000 tons. And the BAM modules are the same. We can drop modules of 10,000 tons and grow with the market. And then we want to align that with offtake from customers, and we want to align that with investments so that we can attract investors and do the financing based on these steps as we grow. I think at the end, you know, the strategy is, and the goal is to become, you know, the largest supplier. Then on the technology side, it's the same, but maybe Moritz, you can talk a little bit more about our partnerships and how do we think we can fill that in.
Yes, sure, definitely. I think one key part here is that we also partner with technology leaders. So we had also like a recent announcement on our website where we have a partner for the coating side, where we really together with one of the big names developing the coating, fine-tuning the coating for the needs of the customers. And that's very important, because like to speed things up, we need to collaborate. We need to create this kind and innovate this kind of new materials together with partners. And I think another very important part was just touched by Hugues in the end. We have a modular approach, but at the same time within a module, like in terms of that's the size we have in terms of capacity local, we have different lines, and for sure the lines are in a size that we can really easily supply to our customers, because in the end the goal is to have one line only producing one specific material to avoid cross contaminations, but also to improve yield and efficiency.
And maybe Moritz, you could also address there, when we talk about lines and specific customers, in a way, each line is an exercise in innovation in itself, right? And maybe talk about that a little bit. And then I want to pass to Michael after that to talk about how that affects offtakes and securing offtakes.
Absolutely, Pav. So the challenge here is really like mentioned before. In the end, anode active material is tailored to the needs of the customer. So like the battery OEM defines what kind of material in terms of size, particle size distribution, in terms of tap density, in terms of the compaction of the material later in the electrode, the surface area, so like how the surface is reacting in the battery, but also what kind the surface material is of. That's where like our partnership comes into play to really tune the carbon in the surface of the battery active material. But at the same time, and I think that's the key we shouldn't forget, we're talking here about natural graphite. So it is a natural resource. It's not synthetic. So every deposit, every even pit in the mine might have a slightly different kind of, let's say, side impurities bringing it into the process. And for sure, there we need to ensure that every line is capable in the end to give the same quality. So like really with the processing, with the lines, to ensure that we have this natural resource, but we bring it to a consistent performing end product, which caters the needs of our customers.
Great. Michael, anything to add there?
Yeah, I think for the offtakes, it's really important to cater the needs of each customer. And I think that's also where vertical integration is absolutely critical in the graphite to battery value chain. So I think here's also why, like first, not all, like as Moritz also mentioned, not all graphite is created equal. So even if two materials come from the same ore body or have similar specs on paper, their performance in a lithium-ion battery can vary significantly. So that's because battery applications are highly sensitive to microstructure, impurities, surface chemistries, and consistency. And each of our clients has different recipes also. So these are the factors that depend not only on the raw material, but also on how it's processed. So from mining and flotation, all the way to coating and shaping the anode material. Also, we have to bear in mind, the second is the qualification process for battery materials is very long and rigorous and really highly customer specific as well. And that's where we from Northern Graphite differentiate us from the competition, because we are the only player outside of China who has an electrochemistry lab, an analytical lab, and the expertise with our team. Like for example, Moritz is a PhD in electrochemistry from Zurich, and we have 6 PhD members in our team fully focused on that. And when a customer now comes and says, hey, I'm using a different binder, can you test it with that? Or I need to change that. We can run that in our lab very quickly with very quick turnaround times. And this is where we differentiate us from others. And that's why, so from our side, full vertical integration does not stop at, I have now the coding. No, we have also the battery analytics. We can talk the same language. And it gives us full control over quality, traceability, which is later on also for quality important, and process optimization across the entire value chain, from mine to battery anode material. And I'm just currently at a conference in Venice where they also talking again about this battery pass, and there also this traceability will be key.
Great. I'd like to there's a couple of things that you mentioned there, and I think let's try and get through them more quickly now as we approach the end of our session. But one is the competition, like our ability to compete with China right now. What's really involved in a sentence or two? I'd like to hear from all of you. Maybe we can start with you, Hugues, and then we can go around. You're on mute, Hugues.
Yeah, I think competing with China is really tough, and if you try to do it the same way as they do, it's going to be very difficult. So, our ability to compete with China has to do with how we develop our deposits, how we run our processing plant, what kind of technology we're going to put in so that we can reduce the cost of purifying the material. How can we code it more effectively, and how can we be very local to the customer so that we don't have to incur, tariffs and other type of barriers that may make it more expensive. And so we're designing everything around that. I think we have to build the relationship with the customer, and having the lab, as Michael says, is super important for us, because we can respond real time to what's happening, and we can take the graphite, we can model it, we can cycle the batteries, and that gives us a lot of data. We speak the same language. And then, last but not least, we have to be growing with the market and with the support of investors, governments, and organizations around the world, like the EU through their Critical Raw Material Act, and the fact that they've recognized our project to do that. And if we do all that well, then we'll be able to compete with China.
Great. Moritz, from the technical perspective, can we compete? What's involved?
Yeah, I think it's a challenge. As mentioned before, at the moment, the Chinese are the technology owner. So I think we need to catch up fast. We need to learn from them. We need initially to copy, because it's not about reinventing the wheel, it's about getting the wheel spinning. And then from there, we need to bring in our Western part. We need, as mentioned before, we need to innovate in terms of bringing the cost down, being more efficient, being more CO2 low in terms of production. And at the same time, it's an ongoing story, because batteries are further developing. So the product today is not the product of tomorrow. So we need also a pipeline of product developments to keep up with the ongoing development in the field, and to keep always this cost performance level attractive for our customers. And I think then we're in a good position for the future.
Great. And I think there was a question in the chat that we were mentioning around synthetic and natural. I think this is a good segue to that. So how that balance is playing out, how you see it playing out, including the use of silicone, and also the future of graphite in lithium-ion batteries and electric vehicles. So who would like to take that first? That's a bit of a loaded question.
I can start from an innovation perspective. So there's a lot of points. So like maybe to break it down, typically when people talk about silicon anodes, in a classic way, it means there is some silicon active material mixed into the anode. Can be typically between 5 and 30%. It can be silicon carbide, silicon oxide, pure silicon. But then the rest is still graphite. So it means these silicon anodes typically are still dominated by graphite. So that's why even bringing this in, graphite will not go away. For sure, there is developments like with all solid state batteries going to pure lithium metal anodes, also pure silicon anodes. But at the moment, the overall market is growing in a way that these technologies will initially grow in parallel. And then maybe in the future, in 20 years from now, there might be a shift to one or the other technology. But at the moment, the growth is in a path that they will grow in parallel. And that goes also the direction with the graphite. What is synthetic, natural graphite? Both have their advantages and disadvantages. So synthetic graphite is independent of a graphite ore body. So you get a more, let's say, unique, or not unique, more stable material, and it's good in cycle life because of the purity. On the other side, typically the capacity, the energy storage capability is lower than the one from natural graphite, which is tending to be more crystalline. And so there's also developments going on to bring the natural graphite on a similar, let's say, cycling performance level like synthetic graphite. And then in the end, it's about a blend, because in the end, all the OEMs, they want to, for sure, tune their batteries for certain properties. And with the blend of natural and synthetic, they can achieve the performance in the batteries they desire.
Right. And Hugues or Michael, would you like to add anything there, especially from the perspective of strategy as natural graphite producers? How do we approach this? Are we advocates for different battery chemistries, or what is our strategy?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I think you know, everybody a few years ago thought that you know, high nickel batteries was the way to go, and then you know, LFP batteries were improved. And I think it goes back to what you know, Moritz was saying today. We'll probably see, you know, more than half a market to be LFP in the future versus NMC. From an anode perspective, it does and it doesn't matter. That means, you know, whether it's an NMC battery or an LFP battery, we're still going to need graphite. But where things change is, you know, what kind of graphite and what kind of capacity, and does it need to be boosted with some silicon, and how are you going to do that? And so, you know, the market is moving very quickly and constantly. And so it's not like you can say, oh, I'm going to make anode material and I'm going to sell the same anode material for the next 20 years. You know, you've got to have a business that can model itself with the market and evolve with the market, both from an industrial base, a product base, and a location base. And you know, there's questions on the chat about what's your priority in the capex. Well, the market will tell me what my priority in the capex is, because I'm going to follow where the business is growing. When we started this adventure in 2022, you know, everybody thought that North America would be, you know, the fastest growing, largest market for the future. It actually hasn't turned out that way. It's moving much slower than people thought, and we're really not there. On the other hand, you know, Europe seemed to be moving a little bit faster, but it's still much slower than what we thought. If we would have put in all the capex in the ground today, you know, we would be bust, because we wouldn't have any customers to buy the material from us at the moment. So you really have to be able to evolve. It's a very complicated situation. Our main advantage is that we are already mining and we are supplying the industrial markets. The majority of what we produce today goes into a refractory, a cell phone, it goes into a lubricant, it goes into friction material to make brake pads. So, you know, we're an operating company and we're selling graphite in all those applications. We have all that knowledge. And at the same time, we've got our group in Germany that's developing the battery materials and working with the OEMs, going through the qualification. And at the same time, we've got our industrial and our financial team working on developing the new asset and working on how to go finance the project. So it's complicated, but I think we can make it, and it's great fun, and we have a great team going after it.
And maybe just adding to the question from Chris, for sure, we're pushing both projects on the capex side, France and Canada.
Great. And I'm not sure if anybody has any other questions on the among the audience. If you want to unmute yourself and go ahead and ask a question, or we have at least one other in the chat that we can address.
You can also raise your hand, I think.
Yeah.
Hey,
Okay.
I was going to ask a
There you
question. You've talked, I think, a bit about the carbon footprint, and I'm just wondering if you could talk about how your customers are valuing having a their tier 2, tier 3 supply chain meeting low carbon emission standards, and how important you see that in the markets that you're serving.
Well, let's take that.
Yeah, I think, I mean, everybody who's in the battery world today is measuring and, taking into account what their CO2 footprint is. I just recently saw an article, I think it was on LinkedIn, where people were comparing, the CO2 footprint of a CATL versus a BYD versus a Samsung and an LG, and, whether they were looking at stage 2 or stage 3. we on the onset wants to be a low CO2 footprint company, and we're doing everything we can from Lac des Îles, where we produce graphite for 35 years with hydroelectricity, but we're still going after, you know, the oil that we're using in the burner and what other burner technologies can we go and resolve. We're still working on how to reduce our water consumption, how to improve our dust emissions, you know. So we're working. I mean, everything we do is based on how do we reduce our CO2 footprint while we're doing it. Now, can we get paid for it? That's really the question at the end of the day, and I don't think we can. I think it's something you need to have if you're going to be leading and successful in the future.
Yeah. And we had a question, Rachel, did your hand come down or you still have a question, Rachel? Rachel Cal? Okay, Chris, I saw there's Rachel. Rachel, do you have a question?
Yeah, thank you for remembering. I thought I want to focus more on listening Hugh's answer, so that's why I'll lower the hand. I'm the battery raw materials GSM at Lucid Motors, and I was wondering about your thoughts on tariff issue nowadays, especially you're running your processing plant at Canada. So which markets do you plan to focus on going forward, and how has Trump's tariffs on Canada impacted your company's strategy?
Yeah, actually, it hasn't, because we're exempted. So, you know, but at the end of the day, we're selling our graphite at Factory 8. So the company that gets most impacted is the customer. But actually, in the case of graphite, natural graphite, crystalline natural graphite, he doesn't, or she.
Do you mean there is a grace period until 2030, or?
No, I mean, today, you know, the tariffs that have been put in place don't apply to natural graphite, crystalline natural graphite.
Things that are under the USMCA basically are not being tariffed. So, and I think
do you think it's going to be continued?
Well, do you know the answer to that question? I don't think anybody
knows, right? Yeah.
It's changing. But you asked the question whether it's impacting us. It's not right now. And I think, you know, the reason it's not impacting us is because the US, if they don't source graphite from us, they have nowhere to go outside of China. You know, I think I'm talking about industrial applications, right? That's what we're servicing today.
Got it. One more question, maybe for Moritz, about technology. So I heard one of the strengths you have, one of the advantage for your technology development was based on your lab and testing facility. So wondering about, do you have half cell or coin cell test facility, or and when you find out that data by running your cell test internally and vertically right after that production, did it help you to make it faster with fine-tuning your material based on customers' specifications?
So in short, yes, definitely. So and to give it a little bit more longer answer, we have capabilities to measure half cells, full cells on a coin cell basis. We're also at the moment integrating into pouch cells. The importance here, and I think that is the key and that differentiates us. Measuring physical chemical properties of the active material is rather easy. In the end, you have a black powder with certain properties. But as long as you have not tested it in the battery, you don't know if the electrochemical performance is on the level the customer asks. So in worst case, you might think from your physical properties, you have a good product, you ship it out, and then the customer tells you, well, it's not performing. And to avoid this, we do the internal tests. It's like a typical screening of 2 to 4 weeks. And we have the answer, and we are with good shape sending samples out to our customers.
Great. Florella, you had a question?
Yes, thank you very much. I'm with Hardgrove Engineers and Constructors, and we work a lot with upstream. Well, we're in upstream, midstream, and downstream for battery raw materials. And my question surrounds what a lot of our upstream customers have to do with their engineering and development projects. And it is making really tough questions around how to build, where to build, what technology to use in order to reduce water consumption, power consumption. So in terms of water and power, and because you're in more than one jurisdiction, you're, Canada, Namibia, how has that affected your decisions going forward on what technology to use, or has it at all with respect to resource consumption?
Who wants to take that one?
Hugues is mute. You're mute. Hugues.
Oh, sorry. It's a good question. I think it has affected us a lot. But on the other hand, we're mining from the ground, so we don't really choose where the deposit is. So we have to adapt. I think that's the right way to look at it. So for example, in Canada, it's cold, very cold, and we have a lot of water, and we have to deal with all of those things. In Namibia, it's super hot, especially in the summer, and there is very little water. But at the end of the day, we still have to use both deposits. And so, for example, in Namibia, we're moving to a dry tailing system, and we're recirculating a lot of the water. But actually doing that is giving us a lot of idea of our Canadian plant in Bissett Creek, because some of the issues you have when it's very, very cold are also connected to the water usage. So it's a great question. I think at the end of the day, we have to adapt because of the situation we're in, and then we should always be on the lookout and talking to the suppliers, to get the best technology to address those issues.
In the interest of time, I think I see 3 hands up that I can see. So why don't we just do those? We'll start with Darren, then Chris, and then Elvis. Darren, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Pav. I'll just keep my question quick. I'm just curious, in terms of the low yields, right? The waste fines that are generated as part of milling and shaping. What do you plan to do with that? Has there been a way to monetize that to make the economics better?
Yeah, absolutely. There's plenty of applications for that, and but they're maybe not battery related, or at least not all of them. But we intend to sell 100% of what we produce. So we're working with customers to qualify those material in those applications, just like we do with all the industrial applications we serve today.
Great. Chris?
Thank you. Just a quick question. Hugues commented how the space has evolved a little bit since 2022. Are you guys seeing any changes in investors' approach to large CapEx projects, and comment on where you think it's going?
I would say, very complicated. I think when we got into this project, we bought the 2 mines from Imerys and integrated them into Northern Graphite, and we raised $56 million in the space of a couple of months to do that. I think if we were to try to do the same thing today, that would be almost impossible. And that's due to, yes, the situation with the market being slower, but it's still growing, 20% plus a year. So, but I think the major issue for us is just the commodity graphite. It's grossly undervalued today, and it's kept undervalued because China is keeping the prices low, so people don't invest, and they're succeeding quite well. So we have to convince investors that they have to invest because we're the future. And you don't invest in the past, you invest in the future, and that's us, Northern Graphite. So that's our job, day in, day out.
And speaking of the future, that's probably a good, and we'll get to you in a second, Elvis, but as we look at the different tariff regimes around the world, there are some encouraging signs about our ability, or about the ability of Canada, the United States especially, but all the West really, to compete with China. And I'm kind of nudging you towards the fact that there is this case going on in the United States, right, with anode material producers.
Yeah, I mean, I think whether it's Europe or the US, when China dumps material in the markets, which we're clearly doing with anode material, we have to react and we have to defend ourselves. And that's independent from whatever political situation is in play and the current tariff situation between US and the rest of the world. Independent of that, if we want to protect the nascent industry, whether it's in the US and Europe, we as producers, we have to make sure that there's a level playing field. And so, the case that's currently with the ITC and any future case that may be in Europe, we have to participate and we have to drive it forward. And we have to make sure that the nascent industry that we are is given enough runway so that it can succeed and survive. And so, we fight for that every day.
Great. Looks like we got a warning. We have 4 minutes left. Elvis, why don't you go ahead and ask?
Yeah, I'll be quick. Thanks, Pav. My question, I think, is for Moritz on the technology side. You mentioned something that I didn't quite properly understand about the virtual plant or something similar, which sounded to me like contract processing or manufacturing. My question is, you say that the Chinese are the masters of this, which is correct, but which parts of the graphite value chain are you looking to do this learning from Chinese from? Is it just downstream around, say, coating and or purification, or is it all the way upstream to ore processing? And how do you envisage that learning process from the Chinese working? Thank you.
Thanks, Elvis. That's a good question. In the end, it's more direction downstream. So it's like more starting from the concentrate, like saying, okay, in terms of milling and shaping and the graphite flakes, the Chinese build up a very good expertise with a low capex way of producing spherical graphite. And also when it comes to purification, especially chemical purification, they are the leading companies are all in China. So like we need to start with these kind of processes to learn, and then for sure add the Western touch to increase efficiency and to further improve from there. But I think here it's important not to reinvent the wheel, but start from what is today's state of the art and then bring it to the next level.
Yeah, on the ore side, Moritz, not to cut in, but we are also doing a lot of innovation on the ore side, right? We're trying to see how we can improve the carbon content, right? And we are looking at, do we need to actually produce a lot of different types of flakes, or are there some flakes that are better than others, right? So there's also some innovation there.
There we're already going our own way.
Yeah, and I think, we've been producing graphite for 35 years. And I would say in some cases, we're a lot better than the Chinese already today, right? So.
Great. Well, it seems to me that'd be a good way to end this, unless there's any closing comments from anybody.
I just want to really thank everybody. I mean, there's a big group there listening to us for almost an hour, a little bit over. And really want to thank everybody to take the time to do that. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out and to Pav and others. And if you want to connect on LinkedIn or otherwise with us, please do. And, please cheer for us. We've got a great team, a great project. And we're really here to support the growth of the battery industry in the Western world. And I think that's our mission. And the anode is the biggest part of the battery, and so it plays a huge role in the battery moving forward. So thank you.
Great. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.
Thanks a lot. Have a good day. Bye.